Hi, welcome to Millsy Math. What I wanted to talk to you today was how to fill your time at the moment if you're a Year 11 student and you are sitting around not knowing what to do and you are looking to do A-level in September. I think it's a really, really good idea that you start looking over the content. The A-level starts very, very similar to kind of the end of GCSE, so a lot of the topics overlap. So if you completely do nothing between now and September, you'll find yourself in a really, really difficult position. You'll need to almost catch up because you forget things. It's really, really easy, especially as now you haven't got the revision you should normally have. I think it's even more important to use the time that you've got. I mean, some of this might be in other A-levels as well, but I'm going to specifically think about pure GCSE A-level and only the pure section, not worrying about the statistics or the mechanics side for now. You're looking at pure is, if you don't know this already, if you're looking to do A-level, you don't know that pure is 2/3 of the course, so the other third is made up with statistics and mechanics. That's how kind of it's generally done. Obviously there may be ways of doing it slightly differently, but that's how it's generally done. And so you have an applied element, which is 1/3, and then a pure element, which is 2/3. So it's really, really important you get your pure skills down. And when I say pure, again, if you don't know that what that's all about, it's all real algebra. Really, everything is really about algebra and ways to do algebra differently. So first of all, what I wanted to do is talk to you about the main topics that filter from GCSE and then down and then continue on to A-level, and then obviously building on that. Okay, the main difference in these is the types of questions, how they ask it can be more challenging. They can model answers in a way that seems more complicated at A-level and AS level as well. So it's the easier you find the skills, the easier you can then work on the modelling and the harder type questions. Okay, so the first one I wanted to talk to you about is algebra expressions, like being able to rearrange. You've got expanding brackets, that's 2 brackets and 3 brackets. Being able to factorise as well, really, really important to be able to factorise and without even thinking about it, without making any mistakes. Factorising is really important. And then you've got index laws, so all the index laws, the basic ones, but also the negative and fractional index laws. So yeah, they're really, really, really important. And then a big one is surds, being able to play with surds, simplifying, moving them around, understanding what they are really, and that's also rationalising the denominator. Because these things can come up, especially in your first year. They could come up in the papers, and then that really holds a basis for everything else. Now, moving on to your next, what I'd say the next thing you would probably cover. I mean, I'm sort of following the edXL I would normally do, but AQA and others would be very, very similar. So the next one I think is very important is quadratics. GCSE, you have a huge amount of quadratics at GCSE, and you really need to know that again inside and out. So you've got the shape of the quadratic, and you need to know using things like the quadratic formula, completing the square. Obviously completing the square as well is very rare to come up at GCSE, and if it does come up, it's rarely going to have a higher than 1 coefficient of x. But in A-level, it's much harder. It's much harder questions. There's fractions in there, and surds and things like that. So it makes it much harder. So if you know the basics, it's easier to build on. Obviously, they have quadratic graphs, so it's translating those graphs as well, and understanding points on the graph based on your formula, and then modelling it in real life as well. So you did see maybe some modelling in GCSE, but it becomes much more important at A-level, modelling for kind of real life situations and understanding what it means, not just about here is the numbers, it's actually, well, what is that part of the equation telling us about that? So that's really, really important. Quadratics, it's important anyway, but I think as you're moving into A-level, it's really, really important that it's there. I am going to be doing videos on these, some questions and everything else. I just want to do a bit of an introduction about the topics. So if you want to follow me, and then you can just see what videos I post. I'm going to try and post every day something about moving into A-level from now. The next thing that I think is really important is, and it comes up, is the inequalities. I've made notes so I don't forget anything. The inequalities. So that is looking at equations and inequalities, really. So equations meaning simultaneous equations, very, very important. So you've got linear, simultaneous, but they don't really bother with that in A-level. It's more about using a quadratic and a linear together. So it's pushing that bit harder. Again, it is in GCSE. Quadratic simultaneous equations are at GCSE. They're not normally used that much, and if it is, it's going to be right at the end of the paper. Now these are the norm at A-level, so you need to be really comfortable with quadratic simultaneous equations with lines, and also understanding on a graph the points where the simultaneous of a quadratic and a line is basically where they cross, and that's very, very important. Again, we can go through some examples of those. With the inequalities, with the graphically, using it graphically, so having the quadratic and understanding when it is greater than 0, less than 0, writing it as a inequality, as a quadratic. Again, that is at GCSE, but a lot of people don't get to it, and if they do get to it, then they might not know it really, really well. So it's really going back and looking over those. And then obviously shading the regions as well. So the regions is really important. If you've got a quadratic and then 2 lines, there might be a region that's, less than here, greater than here. So it's shading regions as well, using quadratic and lines, which I don't think was at GCSE with quadratic regions. The next step, so I've got 3 so far, and then the next one that's really, really important will probably be in the first half of the year, I'd say, would be straight lines. Again, straight lines are you either get them or you don't at GCSE. And I've taught many, many different people at GCSE, and straight lines are just, some people just don't get them, they don't understand them, but you really need to get them, understand them at A-level. You need to understand what the equation is, what it means, also being able to manipulate it, so that you've got the parallel and perpendicular, understanding that sort of basics, but also being able to use that to find and then also using that with simultaneous equations. So it's really, really, it can get quite complicated at A-level, but again, if you know the basics from GCSE, you understand what they all mean, and you can kind of use that then to build on the harder questions. And then they bring in area as well with straight lines. So you might have a graph and then a straight line and then another straight line, and you want the area of a region or whatever. So that's kind of building it in. Again, that would not have been at GCSE, but it's sort of using skills. Actually using skills you may already know, but using it in that kind of context. The next one to go to is circles. So we've had, this is lots of graph work, as you can understand already. We've got algebra, then quadratics, which is graphs, but with algebra. Equations and inequalities, always using graphs. Again, straight lines on graphs, and then you've got circles, which will be on graphs. So it's very coordinate based. It's all coordinate geometry and everything else. So, and with circles, you need to understand not only it's x squared plus y squared equals r squared, which is the very basics of a circle equation. You've got to be able to translate that, understand what the equation actually means when you have it as a x plus 4 squared plus y plus 8, and bit of rearrange it and translate it around a graph, really. So that's and understanding that, playing around with really suggest playing around with something called GeoGebra, which is you can put formulas in and it draws it for you, and you can play around with it. Just see what happens. Is really, I know I'm a bit sad potentially, but I quite like playing around with things like that. And it's quite nice to put a visual, because you can only draw how good your drawing is. You know, when you see it in GeoGebra, you can see that it's exactly, or a graphing calculator or something, you can see exactly how it should look. So yeah, that's circles. You'll also need to be able to find midpoints and tangents, chords and things like that. So and then there'll be areas in there as well, and also then it brings back in the simultaneous, because you're having circles, but then you could have a line through that circle which will have points where they cross, and that's a simultaneous points. So again, it all kind of comes all in together really. So that's circles. I don't think I'm just anything on circles. And the last one I wanted to speak about, which is actually moving away from graphs, kind of, is trigonometry. So you've got the cosine rule, sine rule. Obviously, you should know them too, especially if you're looking to do A-level. You really should know those very, very well. An area. Then it moves. Obviously, trigonometry gets much harder in A-level, but if you know those basics, it'll be a lot easier, and solving real life problems using those. And then the sine, cosine, and tangent graphs as well. So that is another graph one. And I know trigonometry is actually formed all around graphs, but so hopefully you are. I mean, that isn't everything in A-level, obviously. That's just the things I've picked out that you can relate to, because you've just done things very, very similar or the same, and build on it basically. And if you've got those foundations and you keep practicing kind of either high-level GCSE papers or maybe just some random questions I'm going to give you, or you can go and find yourself. I'd always head for the AS papers. Then you can just pick out bits that you can understand, that you can work on, because even though lots of people don't do AS anymore, the A-level, remember, is always at the end of the 2 years. So AS is always structured, so it's kind of your first year. So at least that's the type of questions that aren't so bad. So pick out the AS level questions. So that's it for me for now. I am going to be, like I said, putting on videos on different types of questions and showing you ways to do all this stuff, and it will be it's sort of in between a high level GCSE and kind of A level. So if you are looking to do GCSE or year 10 and you're looking to do your GCSEs next year and you're going for grade 7 or above really, then you can listen. These videos will be really, really helpful for you as well. Okay, so that's all I had to say for today. I hope you're having a relaxing time at the moment. I know it's been a bit crazy. If you're watching this and you're still in lockdown like I am, it's a bit of a crazy situation, but use your time wisely and take care, and hopefully you're subscribing. See you soon.